Hey everybody, I just want to welcome you all to a very special episode of the Get Busy podcast. As you can see, this is not my partner Izzy. He did not get that old. And this is my dad, Herman Earl Jones, all the way from Columbus, Ohio. Say hello to the people.
Hello, everybody.
All right. You nervous?
I'm good.
Okay. First podcast experience. Want to make you feel, at home and comfortable as you can. So yeah, I wanted to get you on here. I had this vision, I think about a year ago. The last time you came to visit, you were telling me some stories about your time in Vietnam.
All right.
And every now and then when I see you, you'll tell a little, few stories here and there. I think the last one I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So I wanted to get it on record, just kind of get to know what that time was for you in your life. And I got a podcast, so this is a perfect environment to do it.
All right.
So let's go ahead and do it. So first, what made you want to join the Army?
Well, actually, I didn't join. I was drafted.
Okay.
Back in '68, they were drafting. I graduated from high school in '68, and you're supposed to go register with the Selected Service Board right after you graduate, which I didn't do.
Okay.
I didn't have it on my mind, but at that time they were drafting, so I got drafted. And I went in as a conscience objector because we were taught not to take lives. So as a draftee, you can go in and you have to have a notarized letter from your pastor or whatever church you're a member of. And what they do, the letter states that we can serve in a non-combatant area.
Okay.
So they automatically put me into the medics.
Into the medics.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. So how did you feel when that time came and I guess you did like basic training? How much time between when you first got like to the Army base and then when you were shipped out to Vietnam, like how much time in between that?
It was about 9 weeks because what they do is usually a 10-week basic training and AIT training. What the AIT is your advanced initial training for whatever MOS, which is military occupational service that you would give. And it was close to Christmas time, so they did it all in 9 weeks instead of 10, just to get us out of there.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I left Columbus early January. In fact, we arrived in Vietnam January 13th by 1:30 in the morning, Pacific time.
Okay.
Very nervous and scared, young man,
You were how old at this time?
I was 20,
20 years old.
just turned 20.
Okay. Wow. So when you got to Vietnam, I'm sure you didn't know much to what to expect.
No, didn't.
Scared, nervous. Like, was it like just, I guess, tell me that time of when you landed and like what you were doing, like how you were feeling, like just give me the whole gambit of like what that experience was.
Okay, my group, they divided us up in two groups. One group went through Hawaii. My group went through Alaska and Japan.
Okay.
And when we got to Alaska, we had to get off the plane to go into the terminal. And they had taken all of our winter gear away and had on jungle fatigue. So it was a cold time
Oh, wow.
trying to get to the terminal. So we went there for like a short layover. And from there, we headed to Japan. And from Japan, I landed in Long Binh approximately 1:30 in the morning with our group.
Okay.
And they would get us to the center where they induct you, and they would put you in different areas of whatever area you're gonna serve. And I was put into the area called Phu Bai,
Okay.
and Phu Bai was located about 40 miles south of it's the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, in which it was the boundary between North and South Vietnam.
Okay.
So that was really scary time. Still didn't know what to expect until we got there. When I got to my unit, I was received by the first sergeant and those that were in charge of the medical unit. My medical unit was similar to a MASH unit that you see on TV.
Okay.
When we got there, most of the, well, I don't say buildings at the time, but it was chicken wire surrounded each area of the building, and we had tin roofs on top.
Okay.
So that made it difficult to do our job because Vietnam, the average temperature during that time was 140 during the day.
140?
140.
Oof.
And it was dropped down to 112 at night. So while I'm doing dressing changes, I would have to hold my head back from the wound so my sweat would drop down into the wound of the soldier
Wow.
that I was treating.
Okay.
So later on that month, the Army engineers came in and surrounded our area, each building with plywood. And then they set up air conditioners for the main hospital unit.
Okay.
Now, our living quarters was totally different. The hooches were, again, chicken wire, and they did surround them with plywood, but they had fans instead of air conditioning.
Okay.
And unfortunately for me, when I arrived, they were out of mosquito nets,
Oh.
which was
So Vietnam had some big mosquitoes, I'm guessing.
big mosquitoes.
Okay.
And they were very aggressive.
That new sweet meat coming
Right.
into the country.
So I had to lay on my cot, and I covered my whole body with a sheet. And this part of my hand was showing outside of the sheet. When I woke up the next morning, there was bites all over that area.
Oh wow.
So, and then they did find me a fan, and we put the fans right next to our bed so it would blow the mosquitoes away.
Okay.
So that was the first night.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
First night. All right. So, okay. So you made reference to the show MASH. I've seen clips. I don't know if I've ever watched the whole episode of MASH, but like, was MASH like pretty accurate as far as like depicting the military medical unit?
Yes, it was pretty accurate. Ours was called, it was the 85th Evacuation Hospital. Evacuation meaning it was semi-mobile. So if we had to move in case of a big attack, they can move us pretty quickly,
Okay.
especially the area where we keep the patients. They had ways to move them out of the way. And one of the good things, we were located near a helicopter dust-off unit. It was the 357 medical dust-off unit where they bring the patients in on them. So it was close by. And so if needed be, they would use those to evacuate everyone.
Okay.
And also with trucks, if need be.
Wow.
And depending on the seriousness of the injuries, because we did have an emergency room where we bring them right in off the helicopters. And then those that needed surgery, they would triage them for surgery right away. And then after surgery, they have like a step-down unit, move to another tent. And, another building. It may as well have been tents, but they were buildings. And each one was connected with a short hallway of like a wood walkway. And where they could either even use litters to move them. And then we'd have our wards set up for after the surgeries, after the ICU, the step down. Then we put them on the wards according to their injury.
Okay.
And the doctor would come by and treat them with the medication they needed, with dressing changes if needed. So we were well trained back at San Antonio.
Okay.
When we first went in, they trained us to be medics and soldiers at the same time because of the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you had to learn to be a soldier, so shooting, all that kind of stuff, alongside of learning how to do all the medical stuff in 9 weeks.
In 9 weeks instead of 10.
Wow. That's a lot. Okay. Did you guys ever run into an issue where you had to evacuate?
No, thank goodness.
That's good. Yeah. Okay.
One reason why I believe our emergency room roof had a Red Cross canvas over it.
Okay.
So that would let the enemy know that it was a hospital unit.
Okay.
And what was so unique about our unit, we also treated the Viet Cong prisoners. They bring them in, and they're searching for weapons and booby traps.
Yeah.
And we treat them, and it's immediately after we treat them, we would send them to another unit, South Vietnamese unit, in a town called Hue. It's about 15 miles away. And that's where they would interrogate them and do whatever they're going to do with prisoners of war.
Okay. So what was that like when you got in, when the Vietnamese soldiers would be brought in for y'all to treat them? Like, how were, did that change anything, or was it the same for y'all?
It depends on the soldiers. Some people had a hate for the enemy, but you have to realize that they're humans. And if we were captured by them, sometimes we'd be treated differently. But the Geneva Convention set up laws for the treatment of soldiers, wounded and unwounded.
Okay. I watched a movie. It was a Spike Lee movie on Vietnam. It came out maybe a few years ago. No, The Five Bloods.
Oh, yeah, that came out later.
Did you see that one?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was watching that movie, there was a scene where it's this Vietnamese lady. She was like a radio DJ.
Right.
And she was, I guess the airwaves, like you can catch it for, the American soldiers could hear it if you got your radio tuned. And she was speaking English. She was talking about how it was like the black soldiers made up this percentage of the American forces, but they made up like a higher percentage of like the frontline infantry. Was that something that you were aware of?
Yes.
During that time?
And the reason I was aware of it because of the patients that come in, the greater percentage of them were black soldiers.
Okay.
From that frontline area.
Was that something that you guys, because I don't know what percentage, like the makeup of your medical unit, like how many were black, how many were white, but was that a conversation that you guys would have amongst each other? Like,
yeah, amongst each other, we kind of keep it to ourselves because putting that out to the public really would cause more, problems for us.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So that's tough. 20-year-old black soldier, you've seen this happen. I mean, you grew up in a different era than I did.
Right.
So I don't, I know it from movies and history books and what I've been told, but I haven't experienced it myself. I don't know. Do you think that, I know you spoke to like, when the soldiers would come in injured, you guys would treat them, like, did that do something to the morale of the black soldiers? Did you notice that, or?
It did some. And many of the soldiers just needed someone to talk to. So I would spend extra time, on the ward, overtime just to listen to the guys and let them know, I understand. We're all here together.
Yeah.
We're all doing a different job. I'm here to treat your wound and try to get you back on the battlefield if possible.
Right.
Depending on the severity of the wound, some were shipped to a surgical hospital in Japan, the 22nd Medical Surge Hospital. A lot of them we shipped there. And some we were sending back to the units depending on the severity of their injuries.
Okay.
They could return back to duty.
So what are some of the things that you've learned about human beings during that time, from the time you got to Vietnam to when the war was over, or whenever it was that you left? Did you take away like anything different from like just mankind, like your thoughts about people, black people, white people, Vietnamese, like just people in general? Like what kind of lessons did you learn, or what perspectives like changed in your life from that?
In most scenarios, you're going to find much of the same racial prejudice that you find back in the States, depending on your leaders. We had ward masters and we had head nurses. Some were kind of prejudiced against certain soldiers, but if you did your job and you just kind of let somebody roll off your back because you knew you were there for a purpose, to save lives, as a medic.
Yeah.
But you have to you learn your own strengths and weaknesses dealing with people.
Okay.
Because you run into people from all walks of life.
Right.
And some were good to walk with, some weren't that good.
Okay. Gotcha. And so did you feel like, was there any instances where you were held back because you were a black, medic in the war? Like, were you treated different from your superiors, or, what was that experience like?
Yes. A couple experiences I remember. My head nurse had put me in for a accommodation medal twice. But my ward master at the time he was racist, and he blocked them both times. So there wasn't really much I could do about that, but just continue to do my job.
Yeah.
She told me out of her 18 medics, I was her best. So I just kind of, helped other guys who had weak stomachs, because you had to have a strong stomach to tend to wounds.
Right.
And even some of the side effects of the wounds to the soldier.
Yeah.
You just had to be on board to just kind of be observant,
Okay.
put your training, to test.
So you felt, was that the thing that separated you from the other medics and what got you a recommendation for the accommodation? Because your stomach, you were able to kind of stay strong in the midst of whatever came in through the door?
Yeah, that had a lot to do with it.
Okay.
And there were some other medics that were strong also. And we just kind of supported each other, knowing that we don't know what condition they're going to come in. Mm-hmm. We just know we're there to do a job. So we had each other's back.
Okay. Did you know that you had a strong stomach for that type of thing before? No?
No, not till I got there.
Okay. Were you surprised that you did?
In a lot of ways I was.
Okay.
So I just carried that training on, to the rest of my life.
Okay. Because after you left Vietnam, of course, you went into the medical field.
Right.
Okay. And you were pretty much doing the same type of stuff, just minus the war part. But,
right.
And do you think that made being a medic in Vietnam did that give you an advantage over people who didn't go to Vietnam?
To a certain extent it did.
Okay.
Because of the experience.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't inherit that because I would watch like medical shows.
Right.
And depending on the type of scene it was, I don't like looking at blood. So when you brought, Dad, he brought some photos back from Vietnam. And he had he had a group that was in a plastic bag that were like the injuries and the stuff that you saw. I think you even had some dead bodies in there.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't want to look at them because I don't have a stomach for it. So I didn't inherit that. So I could not walk that same path. So shout out to you and everybody else who's able to endure those type of environments and scenes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about like some of the friendships and the people that you met.
Well, overall, I've always been an outgoing person, and a lot of the soldiers and even some of the nurses, there were some that were from Ohio. So we all kind of called ourselves an Ohio family. Okay. And we supported each other, during that time over there. Yeah. Some of the soldiers that, some I took basic training and the AIT training with a couple of them. But a lot of us were separated, going to different units, so kind of lost track of a lot of them. Yeah. And didn't know if they all came back or not. I was able to visit the Vietnam War War Memorial, and didn't really recognize any names, but there's a certain air about that place. It's like a spiritual type of atmosphere. Because you're honoring, your fallen brothers and sisters.
And where was this memorial?
In Washington, D.C.
In D.C.? Wow. I'm sure that was a heavy time.
Oh, yeah.
Going back there.
Right.
So tell me about like how I know, like I've always known you as a very strong Christian. Were you a Christian at the time that you went to war, or did it happen after that? And then like, how did spirituality like come into play when you're in Vietnam, you're working, you're seeing these injuries, interacting with people, dealing with racism, like all that stuff? Like how did your spiritual life come about? And then how did that kind of work within that environment?
Yeah, I was a Christian beforehand, and that helped a great deal. Yeah. In fact, when we were in AIT training, one of the chaplains, he allowed some of the soldiers who were Christians to go over to the chapel on Thursdays and have our own kind of chapel service that we were used to at home. That was a big help. We go and pray and sing, cry, and just ask God to keep us safe, because we knew that we were going to be shipping out pretty soon. Okay. So that helped a whole lot, to carry your faith with you. Yeah. You had to have faith, because we didn't know what we were going to end up with. Even if we were attacked, I knew that my faith would just take me through it. Yeah. And my training,
Okay. Did you see anybody, I would imagine like being in a war environment, that would like cause people to have faith or to try to find something to lean on? Like, did you see that when you were in Vietnam, or where people were like, "Hey, Herman, why don't you tell me about that God? Because it's kind of scary over here." Or did that happen, or did you see a lot of people like just reject God because of the war that was happening? Like, must be no God here. Like, what was that?
There was quite a few that rejected me because of the war, because they didn't realize what they were getting into, and many believed that we shouldn't have been there at all, and which we really shouldn't have, to be honest. But our nation has a way of politicizing things, where the politicians make money, the lobbyists make money, and they don't care about the lives.
Yeah.
And we should have learned from the history of Vietnam with the French. The French did not succeed over there. They kicked them out.
Yeah.
So we should have learned from that.
Okay.
And it should have ended. But like I say, political things that happen within our nation.
Okay. Did you so was your political views or your knowledge of why you guys were going to Vietnam, did you know what that was at
Not
the time?
totally. We had an idea, but they never really explained it because they said that we were going over there as visitors. We started out being advisors back in the early 60s.
Okay.
And that just kind of carried on until we got further and further, deeper and deeper into it. And in some ways, we couldn't back out because of our leadership. In 1968, there was a great offensive by the North Viet Cong, and they called it the Tet Offensive, where a lot of lives were lost. And it kind of paved the way for me getting there in 68, because I was told by a soldier that was there the year before I got there that even though we were a medical unit, the Viet Cong would tease the hospital unit by walking the mortars to the outer perimeter and to make them think we're going to attack. But they knew that we had some of their soldiers in there also.
Okay.
So I had to deal with that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was scary.
I bet. Okay. Did you ever anything ever happen to where you felt like this is a close call? I could lose my life today. Like because I know you had a perimeter, but like.
Yes. One of my duties as a medic was being a duty driver. The duty driver would take the guard out to the, I guess you can say out of perimeter. That was so far that they would go and they would set up guard posts, and we'd always take them out there at night. So I took the guard out that night, and trying to come back to the unit, my Jeep stalled in the middle of a big water puddle, and I could hear my heart pounding within my chest.
Oh my God!
Because I could have been shot because I'm sure they heard me trying to crank up the Jeep. And the guards would always, they wouldn't use any light. We had like red lights on our flashlights. And you can only see so far in front of you.
Yeah.
But if there was too much light, then they'd be easy target for any snipers or whatever.
Okay.
So that was a frightful moment. So I prayed and got the Jeep restarted and got on back to the unit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, man, Jesus is my mechanic sometimes. So.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I'm glad you made it back.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I wouldn't be here.
Thank God. God had a plan.
Yeah. The grandkids, thank you too. Man, okay. So how long were you in Vietnam?
I was there a year, 2.5 months.
A year and 2.5 months.
I got there January 13th, 1970. I left there March 28th, 71.
Okay.
Got back to the States March 29th.
And what was that? I remember seeing the picture of you guys. I think you were getting off the jet.
They flew us. It was Tiger Airlines, and there was special stewardesses. At that time, we called them stewardesses that welcomed us on the plane, and they served us, and as we were flying, and they made us, feel really good. Although the nation didn't make us feel good because they called some of us baby killers and whatever. So you were kind of afraid to go anywhere once you got back stateside because of the rhetoric that had been going on for opposers of the war.
Okay. Wow. So when you got back, and I know a lot of soldiers, like went through a lot of things like, PTSD. Did you experience any of that to a degree?
Very little. Having a praying family, my family kept me kind of protected. Like the whole month that I got back, I really didn't feel like going anywhere, and they didn't let me go anywhere. They just kind of kept me, there at the house, and they supported me in every way they could. And, just the memories of the bodies, the dead bodies, the wounded. One memory I'll never forget, my buddy and I, there was a place, they call it graves registration, and that's where they bring the body bags in with the bodies inside the bags. And we volunteered because they were shorthanded. So you had to go and you would unzip the body bag and try to identify what soldier was inside, what kind of wound he had. Sometimes there were bodies with no heads, or sometimes bodies with no arms, or they'd have a big wound. The weapon the Viet Cong used was an AK-47, and the type of wound it would make, the entry wound was large, but the exit wound was bigger, and it used to be in a different part of the body. So they get shot in the chest, and the exit wound may be near the hip. And
wow.
It just depended on at what angle they were shot, and how they were shot, how close, and all that.
Right.
But and that was something we said we'd never volunteer again because that was kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
The other duty we had, the limbs that we couldn't save, we would burn them in a generator, and we would use diesel fuel to burn those bodies. And that odor you never will forget. So you didn't really want to do it, but when your time comes, you get to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
And then a lot of the guys became drug addicts because over there you can get any drug you wanted almost free or for a pack of cigarettes. And they acquired that habit. When they get back stateside, you got a $300 a day habit, and some would steal from their own moms or dads to keep the habit going. And the VA took them a while to even acknowledge that was a problem with the guys. So it was a rough time.
Wow. So with the drugs, was that like how much easy access did the soldiers have to that? And then also, was that a ploy of the Viet Cong to introduce drugs to American soldiers to like?
Yes, it was both, and they made it easy for you to access it.
Okay.
One of my buddies, when we got there, he smoked cigarettes. That's basically all I've seen him smoke. And as months went on, he started becoming more of a loner, kind of staying away from everybody. And last time I remember him, his eyes were kind of opaque, and whatever he was taking, it took him out like the next day. He OD'd.
Wow.
So, remember those things. It just kind of gave me a different outlook on how we were treated once we got back.
Okay. How long did it take when you got back? Like, how long did it take before you felt comfortable, like, just being in your own skin and being able to go out in public? Like,
several months, because at that time, they weren't really that some airports that they got there, people were trying to spit on them, and but we didn't have that problem because of where we landed.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to go out in different places because a lot of the people that were opposers of the war, they would blame us instead of the government.
Yeah.
Because we had to go when we were drafted.
Right.
We were patriotic to our country.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys were there, in close proximity. They wanted to put their anger out on somebody.
Right.
Do you think that's why a lot of Vietnam veterans end up homeless? Was it? I know it's probably different factors, drugs.
Yeah, it had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And many of them were outcasts when they came back, and they couldn't deal with the reality of what they were going through. Didn't want to talk about it. Some of those that were married, their families suffered because they would just had that anger pent up. And if the spouse would try to get them to talk about it, they would just lash out at the spouse. So they had to finally get centers set up in different VA hospitals and clinics to try to get them there to give them help.
Just mental health.
Right, basic mental.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a rough time.
Rough time. Do you feel like that experience as a man, like, helped you? Like, was there anything that you took away from that experience that helped you after, just for the rest of your life, or could you have done without all of that and still been?
Yes, it made me a better man in a lot of ways, and I've always been one that want to help people. So that gave me an open door to do a lot, for the veterans. I worked at the VA hospital there in Cleveland for 25 years with spinal cord injury patients, and just as I listened to the ones in Vietnam, I listened to the ones there in Cleveland because they needed someone to understand what they went through and to help with that. There are times when I had to cry with them. There are times when I had to talk to them about doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And you had to get that kind of rapport with the person where they could trust you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always easy.
Yeah. I'm sure, for the veterans that were military, that did time and came back with either mental or physical or both.
Right.
Because you were a veteran, it made that door open to where you can have that access. They trusted you a little bit faster than they would trust somebody else.
Right. And one thing I did at the VA, especially after I moved to Columbus to the clinic, my examining room, which was my office, I would hang up Vietnam caps and other paraphernalia from Vietnam. When they see that was a big help.
Okay.
When they first walk into the room, they kind of put them at ease because they know, okay, here's a guy that was there. He
understands.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
Okay. So you served VA for 25 years. Then you retired. When did you retire?
I retired in 2012. I did 25 years in Cleveland and did my last 7 years at the Columbus Clinic. So I did 32 years total.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then since then, you've been living at the church, serving at the church every day.
Serving.
Yeah.
Feeding the ones that need food. Work with the Mid-Ohio Food Collective, setting up pantries and produce markets.
Yeah.
Worked those for several years. Just trying to help where I could.
Okay.
And even the chapels, I helped them in the chaplain services. I sung at chaplain services. After I got out of Vietnam, I did 16 years in the Army Reserves.
Okay.
And I worked with the 256 General Hospital in Cleveland, which later turned to the 256 Combat Support Hospital because of the our Iraq War. The wars just before that, we would send troops over there, helping in whatever medical way we could. So just did a lot trying to help my fellow soldiers in whatever way we could.
Okay. So where else did you go? So after you got back from Vietnam, so you still served in the Army Reserves?
Army Reserves. We did a tour in Honduras back in '94, and went there for 3 weeks. And the Army engineers, they were building culverts down around the mountain areas so that the water.
What's a culvert?
It's like a ditch to bring water from the mountains in a safe way down to the lower lands.
Okay.
So they were doing that. So we would give them medical support.
Okay.
We set up an aid station for that, and anybody get injured or whatever, we were there. Did a 3 bout in Germany. Worked at the clinic in Germany, helping with the wounded there. And I supported different schools, military schools. There was a 88 Mike driving school at Fort Knox, Kentucky. I helped them for 4 or 5 years with their training. Then there was a PSYOP unit at Fort Knox also. Me and some other medics, we helped with their training.
Okay.
They go out in the field. So we'd be out in the field with them in tents and, just help anybody get wounded. We were there.
Okay.
And one really interesting mission was AP Hill, Virginia. A group of us went with some other soldiers from other units. And there were Navy SEALs training in that area, so we got a chance to see some of their training, and it was just a good experience.
Yeah.
The commandant of that unit took myself and another soldier up on AP Hill, and we could see where the Confederate and Union soldiers fought.
Oh, wow.
And that's where he said the general strategized the attacks from that hill.
Oh, wow.
And that's why they call it AP Hill, Virginia.
Yeah.
Very interesting place.
Very. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think one of the things I learned a year ago, they told me you were a marksman and what was that one?
And sharpshooter.
The sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did that come about?
In reserves, you couldn't go in as a conscientious objector. You had to carry a weapon.
Okay.
In fact, the recruiter, he told me he was a conscientious objector. He said things have changed. We had to carry weapons, so
And so a conscious,
yeah, objective,
okay, that means somebody, that's typically somebody who doesn't carry a weapon.
right?
Okay.
And don't believe in killing. But
Okay.
had to change with the times.
Yeah.
So I had to train with the M16 and the it was like a modified 45 pistol, which was actually 22 modified.
Okay.
So I had to carry that when I went to Honduras with 2 rounds of ammo, and we also had to learn on the M16. But as a medic, if you got your medic bag and your aid pack, you don't want to carry M16. That's too much weight.
Okay.
So you carry a sidearm
Gotcha.
as a medic.
Okay. And so when you got the marksmanship and the sharpshooter, that was how does that process work? How did you get labeled or get awarded those?
After they score your shooting at the range,
Okay.
and then when you score a certain percentage, then you get a badge for that and certificate.
Okay. Was that in Honduras when you got that badge,
no.
or that was here?
That was here.
Okay.
Now the badge I got in Honduras was a driving badge,
Okay.
because one day at the work site, I saw a cloud coming over the mountain, and before I could yell "shut it down," the lightning and thunder hit, and all that dust turned into mud. It was like a foot of mud. So I had to drive the workers back down that mountain in the back of my ambulance. And they were sitting there. I was driving like 3 miles an hour because you were like over 5,000 feet up.
Okay.
So I kept
One
telling them,
wrong move, and that's
yeah.
no me and no grandkids.
Right.
Okay.
Because going up to that camp, there was a lot of crosses on the side of the roads where people had wrecked. You know, the locals had run off the road, and it was a scary sight. And the roads were narrow.
Okay.
So I drove like 2 miles back down that mountain and got them safe. And when they reported me to the commander, that 2 days later they had the ceremony, and they, accommodated me with the driving badge.
Wow.
So that was an honor.
Yeah, that's awesome. You still got that badge?
Still got it.
Okay. Should have brought that badge.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Bring it your next trip. I need all that stuff.
All right.
Yeah. I'm gonna have my little treasure chest over here. Man, that's awesome. Okay. Oh wow, so thank you so much for your service. That's
Thanks for recognition. Appreciate it.
yeah. No, just want to give a shout out to all the Vietnam vets, Army veterans,
Yeah.
military veterans in general. That's
Navy.
a very
Marines,
yeah.
Air Force, we all had a part.
Yeah. I mean, just keeping our country safe and serving people, and even for, after you retired, serving homeless, people in the church, people that's hungry,
Right.
praying with people, just being the man of God that you are. And a lot of that rubbed off on me. So,
Yes, it did.
Me and Herman. So, I
Proud
just
of
want,
you guys.
yeah. So just want to say thank you so much for everything you've done and being who you are. Got anything else you want to say to the people?
Just keep praying. We lived in rough times, and God will bring us through whatever. So we just keep praying and look to God by faith.
Amen. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. It's your boy B. Jones. That's my pops, Herman Earl Jones.
Oh, yes.
Sergeant Herman Earl Jones, retired. And this is the Get Busy podcast. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
God bless.